Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Chantal. I'm the Marketing Executive here at Sagittarius, and I'll be hosting today's webinar on SEO preservation and how to manage a successful website migration. I'm joined by today's presenter and in-house technical SEO expert, Nick Steele. If you have any questions, please feel free to enter these in the question box on your screen, and we'll go through these at the end. Just a reminder that today's webinar will be recorded and that we'll be sharing this with all of you after in an email later this week. That's everything from me. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Nick and I look after the SEO here at Sagittarius. So today we're going to be talking about how to manage a site migration without having a negative impact on your SEO. So,
we've just got a technical glitch, please bear with us.
So first question is, what do we actually mean by a site migration? There's a number of things that it should entail, but essentially it's any change to a site's URLs. Some examples are if you're moving from an HTTP to an HTTPS domain. This is very common at the moment due to Google's persistence in enforcing it. If you're maybe changing your domain name, even if you're keeping the site the same. Maybe if you're changing certain sections of your site or making upgrades to it, or you could be going the whole hog and launching a whole new website. So what do we aim to achieve during the migration? From an SEO point of view, in actual fact, we in some ways don't want to achieve anything. We want to maintain the status quo and make sure that everything continues as it did before. This includes making sure that rankings stay the same, that traffic levels stay as consistent, and also that any conversions or e-commerce goals that you have for your site continue to be met. How do we check this is the case? Google Analytics is key here. So hopefully you've got that set up, but you can use that to make sure that traffic continues to flow. And if you don't already use a rank tracking tool, it's worth setting one up. We use SEMrush here, but there's lots available. If you're launching a new site in the hope of making improvements to your SEO, then these will come, but they will take some more time. So this next picture shows some key rankings that we were tracking for a client we worked on, and what happened to them when we launched their new sites. So at the beginning, they were a little bit turbulent, but we launched the site on the 15th of January. Straight after the launch, you can see the rankings did change slightly, but this was only temporary and they did settle down later on. Happily, now the rankings have actually improved and they're now running higher than they were before the launch. This next slide shows again some key rankings of some large volume search terms, and they're for quite a well-known brand. However, they also made a site migration last year. They moved from HTTP to HTTPS, and this happened, which is obviously not what you want to see. So where do you start when you're migrating your site? Well, the obvious answer is at the beginning. SEO should be part of the planning process right from the very start. This means getting involved with the designers and the developers to make sure that you're happy with the SEO process. Hopefully you won't be leaving it until the last minute, either just before the go live or even straight afterwards. Why is it important to be involved from the start? Basically, developers have one set of priorities in building new sites, designers have another set of priorities when they're doing their work, and you want to make sure that everything they do doesn't affect the SEO. So start with your current site. Understand what works well with it. And the first thing to do is identify which of the pages are most important on the site. This is where Google Analytics is key. You can actually view the landing pages, which is the page that people enter your site by, and see which ones attract the most traffic. You also need to look at which are the most important search terms that are sending traffic to your site. This is where Google Search Console is really important. This is another free tool. And you can actually see what people are searching for when they click on the link to visit your site. Moving on to the new site, it's important to look at the new site structure. So, will there be new pages on this new site that will target these important terms? And do the previously popular landing pages also have a new equivalent? Looking at the whole structure, is it logical and easy to navigate? And are the important pages close to the top of the tree? By this I mean, this is an example of a site. It's nice and clear and easy to find. This one, the pages are sitting far lower down, which means they'll be harder to find both for the user and also for search engines. If there's a page that you really want search engines to find, then it's sometimes worth moving it right to the top, as we have done in the SEO page in this example. Moving on to the design of the site. So even if the structure of the site is remain the same, I've just changed the look and feel of the site, this can also have an impact. The usual issue here is that the content moves to more image-led, which means that less text, and this is harder for Google to understand what is going on. When you're in discussions with your developers, it's worth taking time to think about how you can edit the site in the future and have an input into the CMS. Will it have the flexibility to edit aspects that are important to SEO, such as the metadata, which we mean as the meta title, which appears here, and the meta description, which appears lower down. We have seen examples before where you can't actually edit this, which means it's very frustrating. When your site's being developed, there will usually be a sort of test version, which will assist on what we call a staging site. It's nice to have access to this because then you can monitor for any potential issues, as well as seeing how your site's come along. However, while this is live, do make sure that it's blocked to search engines. Otherwise, we can end up with sort of multiple versions of a site indexed, and this has sort of duplicate content issues, which is a big no-no with Google. And the most important thing is just to make sure you're always there and make sure that the SEO is always at the forefront of people's minds. So as you get close to the time that your site's going to be launched, the biggest job is to set up the redirects. If you're moving your site to a whole new site, every single page will need to be redirected to the new site. If you're just moving from HTTP to HTTPS, this is less of an issue, as it can be done on a bulk level. However, if the URLs are changing, then you'll need to map them, sometimes individually. You'll also need to include any historical pages that, even though they no longer exist on your public-facing site, they can exist either in Google's index or in the back end of your CMS. This is a good chance also to eliminate redirect chains. These occur over time when changes have been made to the site, and say something gets redirected. A couple of years later, it gets changed again, and this new page then gets redirected again. And you end up with pages being redirected and redirected and redirected. He recently works on a site where even links from the home page were going through 6 separate redirects before you got to the page you actually saw. So, where to start? First, you'll need to crawl the existing site. We use a tool called Screaming Frog, which is free up to 500 pages. But there are others available. Unfortunately, if you have a larger site, you do end up having to pay. Don't just rely on clicking through the site and making a list of the pages you see. It makes it easy to miss pages, and also you won't get all the historical pages included in this as well. Then you need to create an Excel spreadsheet with all these old URLs, and then to do the next stage, you'll probably need access to the staging site. Although sometimes you can ask a developer to give you a list of all the pages on a development site. And you'll end up with something like this, where you're mapping the current URL on the left to the new URL on the right. So a couple of examples here of a stock page, and also additional pages that you might not think about, such as here, where you end up with a parameter on the end. These will still need to be mapped individually. You need to make sure that each page goes to the most relevant page, so there's no nasty surprises when someone does click on an old URL, and try to avoid just doing mass redirects to the home page. It is a time-consuming process and not a particularly fun one, but the ultimate job will be able to be done by developers in bulk, so you haven't got to sit there and actually input them one by one. One of the most common questions is whether to use a 301 redirect or a 302. The 301 or 302 refers to the response that the server gives and how it's interpreted by the search engine. 301 redirect, it interprets as being permanent, so it will know that the old URL no longer exists and it will replace this with a new one. 302 is only temporary, so it may leave the old URL in place, which means you can have some confused search results. When the day of the Go launch comes along, you'll have to wait for the developers to do their job, but eventually you'll start seeing your site populate. First thing to do is to pause any PPC campaigns, so you're not sending people to a website that may not be available. It's also worth avoiding sending any large-scale marketing emails for the same reason. Once the new site is live, first job is to test the redirects. There's two easy ways of doing this. One is to use the spreadsheet you created earlier, and just to click on a few random links and make sure they go and work on a new site. The other way is to go into Google and use a site code and then colon and then put your domain name in. This gives you a list of all the web pages that are indexed of your site by Google. If you click on a random few, again, none of them should error, they should all go to the new page on the new site. If you're using Google Analytics, make sure you update all of the goals and events so that they continue to track properly. And also annotate. This is where you can make notes as to what dates you made changes. And so when you look back in a couple of years' time, you know why something may have changed. If you're using Google Search Console, which we recommend, this will also need to be updated. If you're changing the domain, which includes moving from HTTP to HTTPS, you will also need to create a new account, as Google looks at these as individual domains. If you've got third-party links, such as social media, make sure you update these as well. Also, internal links within the content. If you're copying content across from an old site to a new site, there's often links buried within the text. These may have links to other pages within the site. Even though they should redirect, it's good practice to make sure they go directly there. When planning your migration, best time is to do it at a quiet time of year. There can sometimes be some turbulence. You don't really want to be doing it at your busiest time when it has a big impact on your business. And lastly, make sure you shout about it. It's great news to have your new site. Make sure you tell everyone, and in terms that's good PR. So, thank you.
Okay,
Any questions?
Thank you very much, Nick. That was very insightful. We're going to have a few questions. If you haven't currently submitted your questions, then please do so with the questions box. If not, I'm going to just read out some that we've already received. Okay, so first question. So if I'm migrating my website or changing my URLs, how do I manage backlinks that already exist?
Well, any third-party ones that you have access to, things like social media, any listings that you have your business on and you're able to access them yourself and update them there. Any that you can't control yourself, assuming the redirects have been implemented correctly, these will take care of them. They'll all share one to the new site.
Okay. Another question. So once my site migration has launched, how long can I expect to wait before I see a change in search rankings?
This can vary. As with anything with Google, things like On a positive note, don't tend to move so quickly. If something goes wrong with the migration, such as in the example I showed earlier, it tends to happen quite quickly. If it's all going well and it's just improving, then it can take 2 or 3 months before you see some real improvements.
Is there any cost to using Google Search Console?
No, that is completely free.
Can a migration be managed in-house, or do I need assistance from an agency if you're a client-side marketer?
It can be managed in-house. All the tools we use are freely available to anyone. But by all means, feel free to ask for advice.
And I've got another question. Do you use any other tools other than Screaming Frog and what quite simply looks like Excel to map your redirects, or is that kind of your recommended tool?
No, that's all we use actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, right, well, I think that's everything. If you do have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to Nick or myself and Sarah. Other than that, I think that's everything. So I will send you the recordings later this week. Other than that, have a lovely long weekend. Thank you.